Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, and welcome to Across the Pitch EFL League One. We'll just call it Roundup because we're doing reviews, we're doing previews, we're talking about a team that nobody cares about, and welcome to Across the Pitch, and thank you for joining me again today, Tony Robinson. How are things up in Toronto?
Things are good. No snow on the ground. It's a little cool, but we're forecasting up to, I think, 14 Celsius tomorrow. So break out the shorts and the barbecue tomorrow, Phil.
Interesting. It's going to be, I think, about 85 here today. That's Fahrenheit, not Celsius. That's Celsius. You need to be getting your spacesuit out.
I had to wear my gloves on my walk this morning, so it is a bit chilly. But the main thing is none of that white stuff on the ground. So
there you go.
I'm happy when I don't have to shovel that stuff.
Hey, that's why I live in the desert. Hey, Tony, that actually, this would be a quick question I wanted to throw at you here. I would say one of the most interesting things that I've learned since starting the show is how few people in England know where Phoenix is at or have even heard of it. And, so Phoenix by population is now the 5th largest city in the U.S., but, that's really mostly been over the past 30 years. I mean, it's not a historically famous city like New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. So I guess that all kinds of makes sense. But I just figured that people in England would have at least heard of it. Have people in Canada heard of Phoenix? Does the average person in Toronto know where Phoenix is at?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because we have obviously a large population of snowbirds that head south. Now,
we're the destination. We're like Club Med for Canada. I forgot about.
Yeah, well, I think to be fair, there's probably more Westerners go down that side because it's western part of Canada head south to Arizona. But there are a lot of people from Ontario that go down the Arizona area, especially in the spring because of the baseball you have there in the spring training. But yeah, between Phoenix, Arizona area and Florida, that's those are the two main destinations for a lot of snowbirds. And I head south to Florida, and hopefully I'll be able to do that in the spring. But fingers crossed at the moment.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to make your trip next year because 2020 has just been awful. I'll tell you.
Can you? This is year 2020. Let's call that the year of the toilet bowl.
We'll get that a double flush.
Yeah.
Well, let's get on to some football because that's what we're here to talk about. And speaking of going down the toilet, Oxford United season is really headed there. And, we both said that we thought that they were going to get a win over Crew. Not only did that not happen, they ended up getting shut out. It just looks like, we had kind of said, they're going to get maybe mid-table or maybe make a chance at the playoffs and didn't think that they were going to stay in this relegation zone. But it's really starting to look like that's a legitimate thing that could happen.
Well, I had a 2-0 win, but for Oxford. And for whatever reason, I don't know if I didn't write it down, Phil, but I didn't get your prediction. So this is a freebie. You can actually pick a score that you thought the match would have been.
I think that we both said 2-0 to
okay.
Oxford. I think that maybe that was it. Is you didn't need to write it twice because
probably because I mean I'm on a fixed income, so I can't be running out of extra ink.
Well, and the other thing is this was at Oxford. This wasn't a road match, and I mean certainly Crew hadn't had the best road form or anything, but So Tony, what I want to start with is so yesterday morning, I said, "Hey Tony, I have a great idea for a show. Let's talk about what's wrong with Oxford." And yeah, you kind of said, "Well, I think that people would rather listen to Chumbawamba's deep album cuts or something like
Somewhere along those lines. Yeah, let's go with that.
that." So I put it as a poll on Twitter to see if people would listen to an episode about what's wrong with Oxford, and by a 63% to 36% margin, nobody cares about Oxford. Took that, but you know what? I care about Oxford.
There you go. Well, I'm surprised you got 36%, to be honest, but go ahead.
Well, Tony, I did some research today on Oxford and what I think is wrong with Oxford. And honestly, it's going to make us look really, really good.
We need all the help, Phil.
Well, if you go back to our review show, do you remember what player that we mentioned was Oxford's biggest loss during the offseason?
Refresh my memory.
Robert Dickey.
Oh, did we? You must have mentioned that. I don't remember that one.
Okay, so Robert Dickey, he's a center back who made 34 starts for Oxford last season, had 4 assists. He's actually got onto the championship with Queen's Park Rangers. And, you know, he has turned out, we mentioned that there were a number of teams that lost a staple center back, if you will, and Oxford was one of them, and how the teams would kind of react to that. Well, it seems like Robert Dickey has been a huge, huge loss for Oxford, and here's why. So the first number that really jumped off the page at me was the goalkeeping numbers. Simon Eastwood, he's a veteran goalkeeper for Oxford, and if you take a look at Eastwood's numbers, they have really, really suffered this year. So now this is Eastwood's 5th season as the starter for Oxford. So I mean, this guy is a staple in goal. He starts almost every game, every year. And you look at his save percentages, 2016-17, 74%. 2017-18, 70%. 19-20, last year, 70%. This year, 55.3%. This year, he's allowing 1.90 goals per 90 minutes. Last year, he allowed 1.17 goals per 90 minutes. So his save percentage is down 15%, and he's allowing 0.73 more goals per game. He's averaging almost 3/4 of a goal more per game allowed. So then I said, why is this? So the first thing I said is, well, maybe he's seeing a lot more shots. So I looked at his shots on target. Last season, he faced 100 shots in 29 matches. This year so far, he's faced 38 shots in 10 matches. I did the math on that. In over 29 matches, that would equal 101 shots, only one more than he faced last season. So what that tells me is it's not the number of shots that he's facing, it's the quality of shots that he's facing. And that's where the problem comes in. And this is where I've broken it down to why they're missing Dickey so much. So when I look at their formation on defense, and Oxford plays a 4-4-3 with 4 in the back, there's still 3 out of the 4 guys from last year that are still back there, with Dickey being the one subtraction. Josh Ruffles, he's a staple out on the left side. He's at left back, he's still there. Sam Long, we'll get back to him. Elliot Moore, he's at center back. and he was the starter next to Dickey last year at the end of the season in the playoffs. Out on the right wing, you have Sean Clare. Now, Sean Clare is a new addition, and so basically what you have is, first and foremost, you have Sam Long as center back. He had played right back last year. So first you have Long has moved from the right to the center back position. He's potentially playing in a lesser position, I'm guessing. But the guy I'm really worried about is Clare. I hate to bag on Clare because he actually did play for Accrington. He made 6 starts in 2016-17. But those were in League Two back then, and he only got into 6 starts for a 13th place League Two. He was 19 then. We'll give him a break. But otherwise, he's really only had one season that he played in League One, which was 2017-18, when he played for Gillingham. They finished 17th in the table that year. That means he probably wasn't particularly good. The last 2 years, he's actually played in the Scottish Premiership with Hearts, which, if you know anything about the Scottish Premiership, once you get to a mid-table team like that, the defenders probably aren't as good as English League One. Furthermore, I go back and I look at his plus-minus ratio. The last 2 seasons, last year he was a minus 14 with Hearts. He was a minus 18 with Hearts the year before. I just don't see that this guy necessarily has ever shown that he has the pedigree to play for a top-tier League One team. So now you're taking a guy who's maybe a League Two caliber player throughout his career, putting him in place of a center back who's gone to the championship. Not only are you replacing that, but it's not a like-for-like swap, because then you're having to take Long and swap it. That tells me that Eastwood is just not comfortable with the guys in front of him, and they're making some big mistakes that are leading to that 0.75 extra goals per match.
Well, you've covered everything there, Phil. I think you've made yourself a case as to why we're seeing Oxford where they are now. And I think the stats from the match against Crewe really sort of reflects what you just said. They didn't have the percentage of the ball. They only had 5 shots, 1 on target at home against a team that last year they would have beaten. So I think you've made a good case, and I like how you got around that losing the poll, where people didn't want to listen to an episode, a separate episode of Oxford. And you worked it into this one. Well done, my friend.
Thanks, Tony.
Well played.
I hope people won't mind that too much. But
I hope we still got listeners tuned in for the next part. Well played, my friend.
Thanks, Tony. And so now the other game that happened on Tuesday was Accrington and Swindon, and we're going to save that for the episode that we're recording later, right?
Yeah, I think the one match that we didn't get a chance to sort of review was the one on Monday night, was the Plymouth and Portsmouth match, which I got a chance to watch. And
yeah, that's right. You watched that one.
Yeah, it was, and I did actually, as I said in our recording, I was initially thinking a Portsmouth win, but I changed it to a draw, and I have won one, and it ended up at 2-2. So I'm going to take half a point, Phil, and you had a Portsmouth win 2-1, so unfortunately you don't get anything. So if you're looking at the standings so far, I'm way ahead of you.
Well, I started with Plymouth, and then I switched to Portsmouth.
Well, I think
a quarter of a point.
Well, that's being generous. I think if you give yourself a quarter of a point, I think it was and it was nice to see an ex-Stanley player get the tying goal for Plymouth in Apaku, who got the header and give Plymouth a well-deserved point, really, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like we said, Apaku, he's playing the center back position.
Yeah.
I mean, he came all the way up from the center back position. And, he's a guy whose game-worn autographed Stanley shirt is hanging on my wall. So, of course, I'm happy to see him get an equalizer like that. And if you haven't had a chance to, he did come on the show last year. So definitely check that episode out. He was a great guy when he came on the show.
Yeah, and when you look at the play, Plymouth at home had 10% more in possession. They were at 55%. But when you look at the effectiveness of the shooting, I think they're both around in that 31, 32% range. Although Plymouth had more shots at 14, they only had 5 on target. And when you look at Portsmouth, it was 9 and 3 on target. So really not a lot of effective shooting the way that we would want to see. But I think it's a result that although Plymouth came from behind, I think it was.
When I look at these stats, I see a game where both teams played better on offense than they did on defense.
Yeah, I just think they lived up to their form of Plymouth being a terrific home team and Portsmouth being a good away team. So I think that came through, and that's why we end up with a draw.
Should also mention that Callum Johnson, another former Stanley player, played 90 in this one at the right back position, 5 crosses, 3 tackles, 1. And he managed to get 3 fouls without picking up a yellow card.
Yeah, it's nice to see 2 players that were in the squad last year at Stanley performing well in League One with other teams. So well done to both of those guys.
All right, Tony. Well, let's get on to this week's predictions and the inevitable butt whooping you're going to give me here.
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we've got obviously a full slate coming up on Saturday, and I thought what we do is really just to give a prediction on each one without going into a lot of in-depth analysis, and then we can pick. We've got. I'll save the one match till last where we can sort of make any more comments on if we want, and let's start out with. First match that I've got written down here is 18th place Gillingham at home to Charlton. I'll let you go first, Phil. What do you think of the Gills at home to the Athletics?
I'll go 2-0 Charlton.
That's what I've got. So I think that's fair because Charlton are third in the away table. Gillingham are 18th at home. So I think that it's got everything written down for a Charlton win. The next one is it could qualify for the toilet bowl match is 22nd placed Burton in the home table against Northampton, who are 15th in the away table. This one doesn't really have classic written all over this one. And,
I don't think this is a toilet bowl. I think that the team that we talked about at the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. This is 1B in the toilet bowl.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a single.
This one's a floater.
Yeah, this is a single flusher. The other one we're talking about is a double flusher.
The other one is pull out the plunger.
Yeah, call the plumber. Okay, I'll go first on this one. I think this is a draw. I'm gonna go with the draw, 1-1, Phil.
I think this feels like one of those 4-3 Northampton games.
You see a few goals in this one.
I don't see. I see these guys playing less defense than the 2010 Phoenix Suns.
Well, these teams do not play well defensively, and I think Northampton had a game not that long ago where when I made the comment that there was no marking, no pressure. Every player on either side had 2 or 3 meters around them with the ball. So this could well fall into that category. The next one really could be a really good match, and it's one in the table that has Doncaster who are sitting at 11th, and their home form puts them 7th, and they're home to Sunderland. This is a big match because with a victory for Doncaster, that only puts them a point behind Sunderland. Yet Sunderland are sitting 7th. They need, a win here will move them right up solidly into a playoff position. I've got that feeling again. I just think this has got a draw written all over it. Sunderland never seems to win when they should win, and Doncaster are decent at home.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see this is a tough one, and this is one of those ones where if Sunderland loses here, we might be getting ready for an episode called "What's Wrong with Sunderland." But I'm gonna for one more week. I'll keep my faith in the Mackems. I'll go 2-1 Sunderland.
2-1 Sunderland, and I'm putting down a 2-2 draw. The next one is a team that has really been in I'd say decent form, better than decent form, is 8th place Fleetwood, who have a terrific home record. They stand 4th in the home table, and they're taking on Plymouth, which we know have got a tremendous home form, but their away form, Phil, they're 23rd in the away form. So I just don't see Plymouth, even coming with the result they got against at home to Portsmouth. I just don't see them being Fleetwood, and I'm going to go down on this one with a 3-1 for Fleetwood, with your man Camps picking up a goal.
All right. Well, Tony, I was thinking 3-1 Fleetwood myself, and I'll go with a goal for Camps, a goal for Madden, and a goal for Evans.
Bang on. Very good. And the next one is Ipswich, which they're sitting 3rd in the table, and on the home form, they're number 2, and they're at home to Shrewsbury. What do you see any chance for Shrewsbury in this one, Phil?
Well, Tony, I think that the Tractor Boys are going to plow the field with the Shrews in this one.
Okay.
They're going to see the Shrews are out eating their crops and jump in their tractor and run them over 2-0.
Okay, that's the score I had too for Ipswich win. I just don't see any other result than a win for Ipswich. The next one is everybody's favorite team, MK Dons, who are at home to Hull. MK Dons are doing obviously better than a lot of people expected, sitting 14th in the table, and that's basically what their home form is puts them at 14th as well. But we're playing a Hull team that are second in the away form and second in the table. So, what do you think on this one, Phil? I think I'm pointing you in the right direction here, but what do you think?
I feel like MK Dons are one of those teams that they're good at home. I feel like Hull City is one of those teams where they're good but not great. I see this just being like a boring 1-1 game.
1-1? Okay. Yeah. If you look at MK Dons in the last 4 matches, they've won 2 and drawn 2. So their form is pretty decent. And in the last 4, Hull have won 2, lost 2. But I think this one is going to be too much for MK Dons. And Hull, although I don't, they've got 18 goals for it, it just seems like the team that should be scoring more. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Hull win.
Hey, Tony, there's not a Hull playing in the NHL anymore. Brett doesn't have like a son in the NHL coming over. I wish it was still the 90s. We could have like a Hull versus Hull City contest, see who scores the most goals of the year, Brett Hull or Hull City.
Well, I remember I met his Brett Hull's dad,
Bobby Hull.
Yeah.
I wonder who has more goals, Hull City or the Hull family. Like if you added Brett and Bobby's goals together and all of Hull City's league goals, they both had over 500, didn't they?
Well, in the I don't know if they count Bobby Hull's record because he went over to Winnipeg, and And I actually, when I was working in the insurance business, I had an insurance claim with Bobby Hill because he said he had his ring stolen from the bar in New York, Mickey Mantle's bar, and
wow.
so I had to pay for a ring that he bought with his $1 million contract when he went to the WHA. So I'm dating myself, but anyway, getting back on track here. Next match is the Posh. They're at home to really sort of a team we can't get a handle on, and that's Blackpool. Peterborough, they're gonna be hurting for a win on this one. I think Peterborough are going to be looking to rebound after that loss to Crewe, and it seems like when they have been beaten by a team they expect to win or people think they should win, they seem to rebound pretty solidly, and I think that's what will happen against Blackpool.
I absolutely agree, Tony. I think that we're right in the same thought frame. I also think that Blackpool is the kind of team that Peterborough kind of tends to take advantage of. Not real great defensively, maybe not real disciplined. So I'm going to go with a big score here and say 4-1 to the Posh.
4-1 for Peterborough. Yeah, and Blackpool have won 3 out of the last 4, but they seem to win, as we've said before, seem to win ugly. But I just think they're meeting a team in Peterborough that are going to be hungry for the win. I have a 3-goal margin too, Phil, but I'm going to go the Posh 3 and Blackpool 0.
All right, we're pretty much on the same idea with a lot of these games this week, too.
Yeah, and I all my picks, I've written these down. So and obviously we don't chat about what your picks are going to be, but I think it shows that we're getting an understanding of the teams in League One and what the expectations are. And that takes us to the next match, which is Portsmouth are at home, and which they have a really disappointing home record. And they're taking on Crewe, who obviously had a big win on the weekend.
Well, two in a row, but they were 2-0 over the Posh and then 2-0 over Oxford. So Crewe's coming in strong form.
Yeah, how would you see this one playing out? Just before I say, you give the answer. They had 2 big wins, but they had 3 losses before that in a row. So the 2 wins obviously make their league standing a bit more healthy. So how do you see this one playing out?
1-1.
1-1. Oh, I thought, we're different there because I see a Portsmouth win, and I'm going to say it's close. I'm going to go with a 1-0 Pompey win.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Portsmouth is going to maybe go into a little bit of a lull after that last match.
That's possible. And the reason I would have said normally I would have liked to seen maybe a 2 or 3-0 win because they have the guys that can score in Marquise and Arness, but their home form is so poor that for a team of that caliber, that if they win, it's going to be by a narrow margin. Going on to the next match is a team that 2 teams that we expected to be both down in the bottom regions, and that's Rochdale at home to AFC Wimbledon. Now, credit to AFC Wimbledon, they're doing much better than we anticipated, with having 3 draws and a win in the last 4 matches. So they're in decent form. Rochdale won 2 and drew 2, and then they lost the last match. So this one here is I just don't see a clear winner in this one. What's your thoughts, Phil?
You know, I mean, AFC Wimbledon, they're that team that I thought was really overperforming. It would come back to earth. Rochdale, they're a team where I think that, you know, maybe they don't quite have the talent, but they just seem to have the grit.
Yeah, and a good, decent manager.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you know, they're 2 very similar teams if you think about it. I mean, this is a game at the beginning of the season we would have said would be the toilet bowl. It's clearly not. It's a mid-table tie. I'm going to say 1-1 and Pickett gets the goal for Wimbledon.
Ditto for me too.
and Rochdale has 6 shots on target and 5 of them were stopped by Truman.
There you go. The next one is a team that we saw the other night, Swindon at home to Bristol. And what's of interest in this one is that Bristol have just appointed a new manager. I think people will know him from League One, a gentleman by the name of Paul Tisdale, who spent many years at Exeter and then got promotion with MK Dons and didn't stay there too long. I think I don't know if he has a reputation more of a League Two manager, but Bristol moved pretty quick to get this guy in. So I'm kind of thinking they may have had something lined up that if they didn't get the result, that they were going to make a move and have somebody ready to come in. I'm not sure what your thoughts on this one, but they're playing away at Swindon, which again has just got a new manager. And so this is a bit unique for this time of year in League One this season because we've got 2 new managers facing each other.
Well, I was more just wondering how many times Swindon's going to pass back to the keeper in this one.
Well, just not as many as they did on the other night. I'll tell you that. That was what we said about, and we'll cover that in the Stanley preview. But yes, it's a mistake that when you as a keeper for Swindon, you just want the ground to open up and swallow you up.
I mean, here's what I'm looking at is so. They didn't get on the board against Stanley, which was, just a dominant performance by Stanley. But Swindon, they've been a team that has allowed a lot of goals, but they've also scored a lot of goals. Where Bristol, they're having trouble scoring, but they're allowing a lot of goals. Bristol's allowed 19 goals, 1.73 goals per game. So I think this kind of actually plays into Swindon's style, especially at home. I'm going to go 3-1 Swindon.
3-1 Swindon. When I look at this, Swindon, that was only their 3rd loss at home the other night. And so they can win at home and they can score. They had 9 goals going into the match against Stanley at home. Bristol Rovers are surprising. They're 9th in the away table. So, and with a new manager coming in, I think that might give the players a lift and they want to prove themselves. So I'm going for a 2-2 draw on this one.
Tony, I mean, I think that we actually are kind of getting to the point in time where we can say, Stanley really might just be one of the better teams in League One. And as strange as that seems to say, given the budget and the history and all of that, but and here's what I saw in that Swindon game, and tell me if you see this too. Tony, I know you can sometimes you see a game and an underdog team can win, or a team can beat another team that's better than them by outworking them. This is the first time I've ever sat and watched Stanley and said, Stanley's not just winning by outworking these guys. They're just flat better than these guys. I mean, at least it's the League Two championship season. I mean, obviously you had that back then, but since they've been in League One, this is the first time I've sat and said, they're just flat more talented than Swindon.
Yeah, I think from start to finish and getting that early goal, as crazy as it was, is what we sort of talked about in our show, was to get off to a good start, and they did, and they controlled
it. You nailed that, because you said that the late goal would give Swindon momentum coming in, and then that early own goal ruined that in a hurry. So that was the best thing that could have ever happened. You hit that on the head.
Yeah, and I think the confidence was there. They controlled the midfield, and Swindon might have got a goal, but they didn't get the ball. You got to put the ball on net to get. Although they had a couple of good chances, I just think the team was solid, and we saw some real excellent midfield play. And as we mentioned, we needed the strike force to start scoring, and they did. And I think it was a well-deserved 3-0 win. I don't think anybody can argue against that one.
Oh, yeah. Dion Charles is definitely man of the match. We'll talk about that more in the next episode.
Yes, and the last one we've got is this is the one that I think you're have the sound effects ready for the toilet bowl. And that's Wigan at home to Oxford. Wigan 21st actually in the home form table, and Oxford 21st in the away form table. Yet when you look at the combined, Wigan sitting 24th and Oxford at 21st. I'm concerned for both teams, but I think I'm more concerned for Wigan because they've got nothing announced yet for a replacement manager. And I would assume that Liam Richardson will be the one taking care of the team. And to be honest, when he had charge of the team for a match or two at the beginning of the season, they didn't play too bad. So I don't think they're going to lose much in the way of in the management department. It's just that, Gary Roberts left at the end of the other month. I just don't see good things at Wigan and Oxford. What can we say about Oxford? They're in better form just because they've won 2 matches in the last 5. But I'll let you go first with your prediction. I just don't see this as a classic at all, Phil.
Well, Tony, I don't think even Uncle Joe's balls can keep this Wigan team afloat. But in all seriousness, and I hated to do this because, just coming into the season, you'd never thought Oxford would be in a toilet bowl. But, this is the only game this week where you have 2 teams in the relegation zone that are playing against each other. This is a legitimate 6-point game now at this point in the season. And yes, like you said, I'm definitely more concerned about Wigan. This is a team that just seems to have nothing going for it. And with that being said, this is a state of the union game, if you will, for Oxford, if you will, because to me, even though it's on the road, with everything that's going on at Wigan, the form that's Wigan in, this is a game that Oxford absolutely has to win, or I think that the manager's out.
Well, you could be right, because if they...
Paul Robinson, his seat is hotter than the surface of Mercury right now.
Ouch.
That's getting warm. But, if a Wigan wins, it moves them ahead of Oxford. Oxford win, and they could move 2 or 3 spots out of the relegation zone. I'm gonna go with a 2-1 Oxford win.
I'm gonna go with a 3-1 Oxford win. And I will predict that if Oxford loses this match, that Robinson will be looking for a new job. He'll be polishing up his CV, as they say over there.
Yeah, and no relation to Carl, but I wish him well. I hate to see anybody get fired, but in the football manager business, you're hired to be fired. And I think I'm surprised, as I said only a week or 2 ago, I didn't think many or any managers would be fired because of the budgets. And we've seen that change now, but we'll just have to see. But yes, definitely there's going to be pressure on Carl if he doesn't pull out a result.
So let me ask you this, Tony. So just to kind of tie things up to the beginning of the show when we wrap up here, it seems that we've pretty clearly identified that Oxford's biggest issue is losing Dickey and that they didn't find a suitable replacement for him in the offseason. Is that something that you put on Robinson where, he knew he was losing this important player and the guy he went out and got just clearly isn't getting the job done? I mean, none of their defenders are. I mean, listen to this. I looked at the plus-minus ratio right now. I mean, Elliot Moore is a -8. Sam Long is a -8. Claire, who we mentioned, is a -7. Russell is a -8. Every one of their starting back four is -7 or -8 this year. That's not getting the job done.
No, when you've given up 23 goals and only scored 13, your defenders are going to take a hit on that, and the goaltending, everything is just, it's been the perfect storm of things going wrong. And Carl Robinson's hands could have been tied with the salary cap. This is maybe the best he could do under the circumstances. But it's no longer a hangover. It's no longer a deer in headlights. This is now all hands on deck. This is the Titanic United here, is that they've got to start plugging the hole before it sinks.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point we should put money on Oxford bringing in a center back in January.
Yeah, it's possible. We'll have to see. And that's it, Phil, is the predictions for upcoming slate. There's some interesting matches in the sense that, you haven't got top teams playing each other. There could be some movement in the table. We could see some gaps opening up. Maybe we'll just have to see come Saturday night.
Should be exciting as always, Tony.
Yep.
And coming up next, we'll be recording a separate episode where we go a little bit more in depth on the Stanley Swindon match from Tuesday and look ahead to Saturday's big match with the Imps. Until then, on Stanley on. Cheers.
Cheers.